Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter, and welcome once again to my guest, Oregon Senior Senator Ron Wyden. Once again, great to have you here.
Thank you.
This week, you slammed Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke over the Trump administration's budget that would gut funding for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And at the end of your statement during a Senate Energy and Natural Resources hearing, you had some pretty tough words for him. Let's listen.
In an attempt to build a bridge to work with you, particularly in a state where the federal government owns most of the land, I would support your nomination. And I did. I voted for your nomination. And I will tell you right now, as of today, it is one of the biggest regrets of my time in public service.
Well, pretty tough words. Why are you so disappointed in the Interior Secretary?
What's so troubling about this, and as I said, I try to take every nomination with an independent kind of objective of really looking at the facts. I mentioned voting for the president's nominee to head the Federal Reserve. This is a key agency for our part of the world where the federal government, as I said, owns most of the land. So I spent a lot of time meeting with him. In his confirmation hearing, he mentioned Teddy Roosevelt 9 separate times. And that really connected with me because Teddy Roosevelt was important to Oregon. Teddy Roosevelt signed the law creating the Crater Lake National Park, our wonderful, beautiful lake, that incredible blue. So I said, I'm really going to see if we can make this work, and I got a lot of flack for that vote, but I was still hopeful that it would work for Oregon. And then we saw one policy after another. We saw the monuments, the Cascade Siskiyou. We saw this horrible policy of, in effect, saying we're going to have offshore oil drilling. And I said, I guess we're talking about people being able to see oil derricks from Haystack Rock. And on one issue after another, he just wasn't advancing policies that resembled what Teddy Roosevelt would be doing. The Land and Water Conservation Fund is so popular in our state. It's popular with people all across the political spectrum. So when I saw in the budget that he was recommending basically phasing it out altogether, I asked him point blank, would Teddy Roosevelt would he have been in favor of essentially getting rid of the budget for the Land and Water Conservation Fund? And when his answer was again not responsive, that's when I said what I did.
And you said you also were concerned about taking money from a department wildfire account during a wildfire season to pay for an unrelated helicopter ride. What was the Secretary's response?
That was a shell game. He just ignored that because he knows the Inspector General is already looking into it. But here we had this brutal fire season. We saw fires nobody would have imagined. We saw a fire leap across the Columbia River. I mean, rivers historically have been a break in terms of fires, and they played a shell game with the fire accounts during a really raging fire season. The Inspector General is looking at it now.
This has been in the news a lot. President Trump imposing tariffs on aluminum and steel with exemptions for some countries, and this is mostly aimed at China. Those tariffs a good idea?
Right now, there are a lot more questions than answers with respect to this. And trade is so important to our state. 1 out of 5 jobs depends on international trade. The trade jobs often pay better than do the non-trade jobs. I tell people my philosophy is grow it in Oregon, make it in Oregon, add value to it in Oregon, and ship it somewhere. And what we know about the tariffs thus far is our allies who do a lot of trading with Oregon, they're not very happy, and it's not clear that these tariffs are going to really deal with something that is important to us, and that is oversupply of steel and aluminum in China. So I have had a number of talks with the Trump administration about this with their key officials, and right now they're in the process of trying to make distinctions. Certain areas might be excluded. And to just put it in kind of context, just last week we had another major trade agreement with a whole host of nations, hundreds of millions of people involved in an area that's going to be beneficial to them, and the United States wasn't at the table.
Well, President Trump signed the GOP tax plan into law, and under that plan, a number of companies have been buying back their stock. And you and two other senators did an analysis showing U.S. companies have doubled those repurchases of their own shares this year compared to last year. Wells Fargo leading the way with more than $22.5 billion, followed by Google's parent company and Visa, on and on. You've been tweeting about this. Why should we care about stock buybacks?
The American people, Oregonians, were told that this tax bill would be focused on the middle class, families. In fact, the president's top economic man said that the middle class was going to get a pay raise of $4,000. That was their claim. And that's so important to me, and it's important to the Oregon economy, because the middle class consumer drives most of the economic activity in our state. And so I went to the SEC filings, the Security and Exchange filings, and public statements, and we found that now more than 20 times the amount of the tax relief has gone to essentially stock buybacks. 80% of the stock is owned by the 10 wealthiest, people, so they benefit dramatically. It drives up the price of the stock. 20 times as much tax money has been used for these stock buybacks as has been used for wage increases and bonuses for workers. I can tell you, Laurel, never once, and I was the ranking Democrat on the Finance Committee during the whole debate, did we hear that the tax debate was for stock buybacks. We heard it was for middle-class workers. That's not where the money's been going.
Senator, you're getting into the digital age these days, doing your own video reports. They're called Ron Reports. Let's take a look at what you did on the coast recently.
Hi, Ron Wyden here with a special edition of the Ron Report. I'm home having town meetings, and in back of me is the beautiful Pacific Ocean. Drilling in it? You gotta be kidding me. Not on my watch.
We have about 30 seconds left, but you're becoming a YouTube star.
My wife thinks this is very entertaining. We might be dating ourselves. She says this reminds her of Wayne's World on Saturday Night Live, where I just stand up and start talking. But what we're trying to do is figure out new ways to communicate to people. So sometimes when there's a current issue, we just said, hey, another edition of the Ron Report, and we let it rip.
Well, we look forward to more Ron Reports.
Thank you.
Senator Wyden, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
On Straight Talk, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Join me next week when my guest is 5th District Congressman Kurt Schrader. We'll see you next week for Straight Talk.